Emma Hart arrived at the rooftop party just as the sun dipped behind the glass towers of the city, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and violet. She wore a simple navy blue dress, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed for attention, and her hair was tied loosely at the back of her neck. Around her, laughter floated through the air like music, glasses clinked, and expensive perfume mixed with the scent of the warm evening breeze. People moved in tight circles, leaning close to each other, showing off watches, shoes, and stories about success. Emma Hart stood near the railing, quietly watching it all, her fingers wrapped around a glass of water instead of champagne. A woman in a red gown brushed past her and said, "Excuse me," without really looking. Emma Hart smiled softly to herself and whispered, "No problem at all." She liked being invisible tonight. It gave her space to listen. From where she stood, she could hear snippets of conversations, someone bragging about a promotion, another person complaining about their boss, and somewhere nearby, loud laughter from a group of men who seemed to enjoy being the center of attention. Emma Hart leaned back against the railing, looking down at the traffic far below, its lights like a river of stars, and thought, funny how people shine so brightly when they think they're being watched. She had come alone, not to impress, not to be noticed, but simply to breathe, to observe, and to remind herself of the world beyond boardrooms and contracts. She took a slow sip of water and closed her eyes for a moment, enjoying the calm before she felt a presence shift nearby. "Hey, you look like you're lost," a man's voice said, loud and playful, cutting into her quiet moment. Emma Hart opened her eyes and saw 4 men standing a few steps away. The one who spoke first had slicked back hair and a wide grin, the kind that seemed confident but sharp at the edges. "I'm Marcus," he said, pointing at himself. "And these are my guys, Tom, Julian, and Bryce." The others nodded, smirking as they looked her up and down. Emma Hart straightened and offered a polite smile. "I'm Emma Hart," she replied calmly. Julian took a sip from his drink and laughed. "So, Emma Hart, what brings you here? Job hunting? Free food?" Bryce added, "Yeah, this isn't really a place for, people without connections." Their laughter rose together, loud and careless. Emma Hart didn't react right away. She simply looked at them, her eyes steady, her face peaceful. The silence stretched, making Marcus shift slightly. "Hey, we're just joking," he said, though his tone still carried a challenge. Emma Hart tilted her head. "Jokes are supposed to be funny," she said softly. That only made Tom laugh harder. "Relax. We all work at Titan Ridge Group. Big company. Maybe you've heard of it." Emma Hart nodded slowly. "I have," she said. Marcus puffed out his chest. "Figures. Not everyone gets to be part of something important." Emma Hart took another slow sip of water, her calm making their energy bounce awkwardly against her stillness, like waves hitting a stone wall. "Which part of Titan Ridge do you work in?" Emma Hart asked, her voice gentle, curious rather than sharp. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Thinking of applying." Julian leaned in and said, "We could put in a word for you. Though, no promises." Bryce laughed. "Depends what you're good at. Cleaning? Coffee runs." Emma Hart didn't flinch. "I was just wondering," she replied. Tom shrugged. "I'm in operations. Big deals, big meetings." Julian added, "Marketing. I make the company look good." Marcus smirked. "And I handle corporate strategy. The real brain work." Emma Hart nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting," she said. "And who do you report to?" The group paused. Marcus frowned slightly. "The executive team, obviously." Emma Hart pressed gently. "Names?" Bryce waved his hand. "Some CEO up top. Never met her. She's always behind emails and screens." Emma Hart's lips curved into the smallest smile. "Always behind emails?" she repeated. Julian laughed. "Yeah, probably hiding in some fancy office counting money." Emma Hart reached into her pocket slowly, not in a dramatic way, just casually, as if she were checking the time. "That's funny," she said. "I thought I recognized your names." Marcus crossed his arms. "From where?" Emma Hart pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and turned the screen toward them. On it was an email thread, neat and professional. At the bottom, a signature read, Emma Hart, Chief Executive Officer, Titan Ridge Group. The air changed instantly. The laughter died. The smiles faded. The city noise rushed back into the silence they created. Tom blinked first. That's not real, he said, though his voice shook. Emma Hart kept the phone steady. You're welcome to check the address, she replied. Julian leaned closer, reading the screen, his face draining of color. Marcus, he whispered. Marcus swallowed hard. This is a joke, right? Emma Hart lowered her phone and met his eyes. Do I look like I'm joking? Bryce stepped back, nearly bumping into a table. We didn't know, he said quickly. We were just messing around. Emma Hart nodded slowly. I believe you, she said. That's usually how people show who they are, when they think it doesn't matter. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. Emma Hart, listen, we've had a few drinks. Things got out of hand. Emma Hart's voice stayed calm. I've received reports about your behavior for months, she said. Tonight just confirmed them. Tom's face crumpled. Please, this job is everything to me. Julian added, we'll change. We swear. Emma Hart looked at each of them in turn, her eyes not cold, but firm. Respect isn't something you promise when you're afraid, she said. It's something you show when you feel safe. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The music from the party drifted back in, cheerful and unaware, as if the world around them had not just shifted. I'm sorry, Emma Hart said quietly, though her tone held no anger. But your employment ends tonight. Bryce sank into a chair, staring at the floor. Tom rubbed his face with both hands. Julian whispered, What are we going to do? Emma Hart slipped her phone back into her pocket. That part is up to you, she replied. She took a step away from the group, then paused. I didn't come here to teach lessons, she added. I came here to enjoy the evening. Marcus finally spoke, his voice low. You didn't have to do it like this. Emma Hart turned back, meeting his eyes one last time. Neither did you, she said gently. She walked past them, blending once more into the crowd, her simple dress moving between bright colors and shining jewelry. No one noticed her leave the rooftop. No one clapped. No one whispered her name. Outside, the city air felt cooler, cleaner. Emma Hart took a deep breath and looked up at the dark sky. She didn't feel proud. She didn't feel powerful. She just felt calm. As she walked down the street, her heels clicking softly against the pavement, she thought about how easy it was to laugh at someone when you believed you stood above them, and how heavy the silence became when you realized you never did. Emma Hart walked slowly down the quiet street, the sound of the party fading behind her like a dream she had already woken from. The city lights reflected in small puddles on the sidewalk, and every step she took felt lighter than the one before, even though her thoughts were heavy. She stopped at a small cafe on the corner, its windows glowing warmly against the cool night. Inside, a barista with tired eyes smiled and asked, Long night? Emma nodded. Something like that, she replied. She ordered tea instead of coffee, craving calm rather than energy. As she waited, her phone buzzed softly in her hand. A message from her assistant read, Did you mean what you said tonight? Emma stared at the words, then typed back, I did. But it still wasn't easy. She took her tea and sat by the window, watching strangers walk past, each one carrying a story she would never know. For the first time that night, she let her shoulders drop, let the tension slide away, and whispered to herself, You did what you had to do. The words didn't sound proud. They sounded tired and honest. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows of Emma's office, painting long lines across the polished floor. She stood by her desk, flipping through reports, when her assistant, Clara, knocked softly. They've been calling since dawn, Clara said, holding up the office phone like it weighed a ton. Emma sighed. I expected that. Clara hesitated. Do you want me to tell them anything? Emma thought for a moment, then shook her head. No. Let silence do the talking. Clara nodded and turned to leave, then paused. You okay? Emma looked out at the city skyline. I will be, she said. Later that morning, the board of directors gathered in the conference room. One man leaned forward and said, "That was bold, Emma." She met his gaze. "It was necessary." Another asked, "Do you worry about backlash?" Emma folded her hands on the table. "I worry about what happens if we allow people to forget that respect matters." The room fell quiet, and for a moment, she saw something in their eyes that felt like understanding. That afternoon, Emma walked through the lower floors of the company building, a place she rarely visited without a schedule or a meeting waiting. A young intern nearly bumped into her and froze. "I'm so sorry," he blurted out. Emma smiled. "It's okay. Where are you headed in such a hurry?" He pointed down the hall. "First day. I don't want to be late." Emma nodded. "Being on time is good," she said, "but being kind will take you further." The intern blinked, then smiled shyly. "I'll remember that." As she walked on, Emma thought about the men from the night before and how different this moment felt. Here, in this quiet hallway, no one laughed at her. No one tried to stand taller by pushing someone else down. The contrast settled deep in her chest, reminding her why she had built this company in the first place, not just to succeed, but to create a place where people could feel safe to be themselves. Later, her phone rang again. This time, she answered. "Emma Hart," she said. Marcus's voice came through, low and careful. "I don't expect you to change your mind," he said, "but I wanted to say, I was wrong." Emma leaned back in her chair. "Go on." He took a breath. "We forgot that there were real people behind the titles. We treated you like you didn't matter because we thought you were no one." Emma closed her eyes for a moment. "And now," she asked. "Now I know how heavy that feels," Marcus replied. Emma nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I hope you carry that lesson with you," she said, "wherever you go next." The line went quiet. She set the phone down gently, not with relief, but with a quiet sense of closure. That evening, Emma met her old friend Nina at a small restaurant tucked between bookstores and art shops. Nina raised an eyebrow as Emma sat down. "You look like someone who just moved a mountain," she said. Emma laughed softly. It felt more like stepping out of the way and letting the mountain fall on its own. Over dinner, Emma told her everything. Nina listened, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. "You fired them. At a party." Emma nodded. Nina shook her head. "Only you." Then she smiled. "But I get it." Emma stared at her plate. "I didn't want to be cruel," she said. Nina reached across the table. "You weren't. You were clear. There's a difference." The words settled in Emma's heart like a gentle hand on her back. Days passed, and the story spread quietly through the company, changing as stories always did. Some said Emma had been cold. Others said she had been brave. Emma didn't correct anyone. She focused instead on the people who came to her office, nervous but hopeful, asking for chances, asking for guidance. One young woman said, "I heard you care about how people treat each other." Emma smiled. "I care about who we become when no one is watching." The woman nodded slowly, as if those words meant more than a policy ever could. Emma began to feel something new growing inside her. Not pride, but purpose. One night, alone in her apartment, Emma stood on her balcony and looked out at the same city lights she had seen from the rooftop. This time, they didn't feel distant. They felt close, like 1,000 small stories unfolding at once. Her phone buzzed with a message from Clara. "Tomorrow's agenda is full. You ready?" Emma typed back, "Always." She set the phone down and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. The wind brushed past her, cool and gentle. "You did okay," she whispered to the night, not as a celebration, but as reassurance. At the next board meeting, a new proposal was presented, an internal program focused on workplace respect and communication. One director glanced at Emma. "Your idea?" he asked. Emma nodded. "Everyone deserves to feel seen." The room hummed with quiet agreement. When the vote passed, Emma felt a small, warm smile spread across her face. It wasn't a victory. It was a step. And sometimes she realized steps mattered more than leaps. Weeks later, Emma ran into the intern from the hallway at the cafe. He waved excitedly. "I got a full-time position," he said. Emma clapped softly. Congratulations. He hesitated. I try to be kind, like you said. Emma felt her throat tighten just a little. That's the best success you can have, she replied. As he walked away, she felt something settle in her chest, a quiet, steady warmth. Late one evening, Emma received a letter in the mail. It was from Tom. The words were messy, handwritten. He thanked her for the lesson, said he had found a new job, said he was trying to be better. Emma folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. The seasons changed and the city did too. New faces filled the offices. New laughter echoed in the halls. Emma walked through it all, not above, not below, but among. She stopped to ask about families, about dreams, about weekends. People began to speak her name with something that sounded like trust. One quiet morning, Emma stood again at a railing, this time in her own building, watching the city wake up. Clara joined her. Do you ever regret that night? She asked. Emma thought for a long moment. I regret that it had to happen, she said. But not that I stood still when it did. Emma returned to her office, sat at her desk, and opened a blank document. At the top, she typed a single line. What kind of leader do I want to be today? She smiled, knowing the answer would change every day, and that was okay. That evening, she walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, her steps unhurried, her mind quiet. A stranger passed her and smiled. Emma smiled back. No titles, no roles, just two people sharing a moment in a wide, moving world. And as Emma Hart reached her door and turned the key, she paused, listening to the distant sounds of the city. Cars, voices, laughter, life. She realized then that respect was not something you demanded or enforced. It was something you built, moment by moment, choice by choice, in how you saw others and how you allowed them to see you. She stepped inside, closed the door gently behind her, and felt a deep, steady peace settle over her. Not because she had won anything, not because she had stood above anyone, but because she had stayed true to who she was when it mattered most. The next morning, Emma Hart woke before her alarm, the pale light of dawn slipping through the curtains like a quiet promise. She lay still for a moment, listening to the city stretch and breathe beyond her window. Somewhere below, a delivery truck rumbled past, and a bird sang from a nearby rooftop, its voice small but certain. Emma sat up and wrapped her robe around her shoulders, walking into the kitchen to make tea. As the kettle warmed, she stared at her reflection in the dark glass of the window. Today, she whispered to herself, I choose to listen. The words felt simple, but they carried weight. At the office later that morning, she held an open-door meeting, inviting anyone who wanted to speak to step in. One by one, people came, some nervous, some excited, some simply curious. A young man talked about struggling to fit in. A woman spoke about feeling unseen in meetings. Emma listened to every word, nodding, asking questions, writing notes in a small leather notebook she kept just for moments like this. When the room finally grew quiet, she stood and said, Thank you for trusting me with your stories. We can't fix what we don't face together. The room didn't erupt in applause. It didn't need to. The silence that followed felt strong, steady, and full of something like hope. That afternoon, Emma stepped outside the building and walked a few blocks to a small park tucked between busy streets. She sat on a bench and watched children chase each other across the grass, their laughter ringing out without care or caution. An elderly man fed crumbs to a line of pigeons, smiling as they fluttered around his feet. Emma closed her eyes for a moment and let the simple scene wash over her. Her phone buzzed, but she ignored it. For once, she didn't want schedules or plans or decisions. She wanted this: sunlight on her face, the smell of fresh air, the quiet reminder that life moved in gentle rhythms beyond boardrooms and policies. A woman sat down beside her and said, Beautiful day, isn't it? Emma nodded. It really is. They shared a few words about the weather, about the trees, about nothing important and everything meaningful. When the woman stood to leave, she smiled at Emma and said, You seem like someone who carries calm with her. Emma watched her walk away, surprised by how deeply those simple words settled in her heart. Back at the office, Clara handed Emma a small envelope. "This came for you," she said. Inside was a handwritten note from Nina. It read, "You don't just lead a company. You lead people's days, their moods, their hopes. Don't forget how powerful that is." Emma folded the note and slipped it into her pocket. That evening, she stood in the empty conference room, looking at the long table and the chairs neatly pushed in. She remembered her first day as CEO, how her hands had trembled just a little as she sat in the head chair. Now, the room felt familiar, not because she owned it, but because she belonged there. She turned off the lights and whispered softly, "Thank you," to no one in particular, and to everything that had brought her to this place. Mistakes, courage, silence, and all. On her way home, Emma stopped by the cafe from that quiet night after the party. The same barista recognized her and smiled. "Tea again?" he asked. Emma laughed softly. "You know me too well." She took her cup and sat by the window, watching the world move past in gentle streams of headlights and shadows. A couple at the next table argued in hushed voices, then laughed, their hands finding each other across the space between them. Emma thought about how fragile and strong people could be all at once. She took out her notebook and wrote a single sentence: "Power fades. Kindness echoes." She closed the book, feeling as if she had placed a small piece of her heart onto the page. That night, Emma Hart stood once more on her balcony, the city lights glowing like a soft sea of stars below her. She breathed in deeply, feeling the cool air fill her lungs, steady and grounding. She thought about the woman at the party she had once been, the quiet observer, the invisible presence, and the woman she was now, still quiet, still observant, but no longer unseen. Emma rested her hands on the railing and smiled, not at the city, but at the path she had walked within herself. She realized that her story was not about standing above others or proving anything at all. It was about choosing, again and again, to meet the world with open eyes and an open heart. And as she turned back into the warmth of her home, closing the door behind her, Emma felt something rare and gentle settle over her, a sense that she was exactly where she was meant to be, becoming exactly who she was meant to become.